everyone, it's RuPaul's Drag Race Season 13, Episode 7, Bossy Rossy, the reboot. So, I am continuing my trend of not really understanding the judges. I'm close. I get most of it, but repeatedly I'll be like, oh, I'm reasonably sure I know who's in the top and the bottom, and someone from the bottom will be in the top, and someone from the top will be in the bottom, and then people will be safe that I was sure in the top, that kind of thing. I'm sure, I shouldn't say I'm sure you know, because you might have a totally different opinion. And like always, with all of my recaps, I'm not sold on this. I don't get any money for you agreeing with me, so feel free in the comments to tell me why you feel differently. I feel, so I've started watching, I used to watch the show the next morning, really early, but recently I've been watching it semi-live. My husband will put the toddler to bed, and then, you know, I'll stay up, which was great. Stayed up a little late, woke up at 3 a.m. with my toddler who couldn't go back to sleep. So running on adrenaline and warm lemon water. Such an influencer thing, right? Anyway, I found this a very confusing episode. I'm starting to feel like people pick their favorites and who they're going to root for based on how people are behaving on Twitter. So I'm watching Twitter during the episode, and it seems to be that if people are way out of line, we then decide this queen deserves more and like see everything through that lens of this queen is better. And I think that leads to, it's almost worse, because then we start, instead of being like, oh, I see why this happened, it's just a weird dynamic. And so I think I'm going to stop watching Twitter during the show, because it's kind of like living in a parallel universe where you go, do they see what I see? So anyway, they talk about the double T curse. We see that several team members that have worked with them basically don't go anywhere. I have got Meg written down. I don't remember. So I watched the preview, and sometimes my notes don't make sense. They do the reading challenge, which was very and it was kind of interesting because this happens, which is the experience of the queens on the show doesn't always replicate what we see as the final product. And what I mean by that is not, oh, the editing is so weird. It's just that maybe like sitting and having meals, they see a different side of the queens than we see, or they don't see how endearing people are in interviews. That's definitely for sure. I know, I've said this before, I worked on a reality show, which you can watch over on Amazon Prime, called Knockout, N-O-C-K. It's an archery themed one. It's 10 episodes, 30 minutes. Go watch it. Go make me famous. I'm not making it. I mean, theoretically, if everyone watched it, I could make money, but I'm not. Anyway. And I'll tell you that that's definitely something that I observed, where the cast and the crew would see something and be like, this dude is such a jerk. But the people in, like, the contestants, like, were under his, it was just weird. They were like, they thought he was much cooler and everything than the crew could clearly see this guy was not. Now, maybe that'll make you go watch the show, because you'll be like, who is it? Anyway, maybe I'll recap my own show. Wouldn't that be heartbreaking for me to watch the show that, anyway. So they do the reading challenge. It's not very good, but they all talk about how weird Utica is. And I'm thinking, like, they all think so confusing, so weird. And yeah, Utica's quirky, but it's interesting because we haven't seen a side of Utica that I feel is so unusual for a drag queen. So that we've seen a side of Utica that's so much weirder than, I mean, definitely not a Tammy Brown. But even people like a Jinx Monsoon or a Ben de la Creme. Like, we've seen a lot of really unique Alaska. Who am I thinking of? Sharon Needles. I always get their names confused. But, like, we don't see, we've seen weird, Evie Oddly, you know, so it's kind of like when someone goes, oh, you're so weird. I thought, have you ever seen drag queens? They're all kind of weird. So they all with that. They all talked about Denali being kind of forgettable. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I thought, and this is going to be relevant later on, I thought Denali should have won the original lip sync against LaLa Ri. LaLa Ri did excellent, but I felt like Denali lip synced in ice skates and turned a completely credible lip sync in ice skates against someone not in ice skates. And I felt like that alone, to me, that felt like Denali never should have been in the loser group to begin with. Anyway, they pair everyone up. we have Rose, LaLa, and Denali, Gottmik, Olivia, Utica, Simone and Kandy, Tina and Elliot. So we paired everyone up and we're doing they called it an improv challenge, but they were, so not to be all like real improv, because there isn't, you know, but they did have somewhat of a script and they had the ability ahead of time to make some choices. I assume they were also taught some of the rules of improv, which is like you don't deny your partner, you go there with them, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I was worried for Utica right off the bat when she's like, I'm amazing, but I'm a scene stealer. Because that's not exactly something that's, unless they all said it lovingly, like you're always so interesting, you steal the scene. You're not supposed to steal the scene, especially in improv. It's not that kind of thing. And we've seen how, like, going back to the Bachelor, how that can really hurt someone like Milk with, I almost said Tracy Martell, which is a joke, Trixie Mattel. Anyway, and they're all given kind of themes, and they're going to do a talk show. But I will say this. So Tina Burner's someone who this episode went up a little. I had not seen, when I originally saw Tina, I thought she had a lot of potential, and then she's just kind of been mean this whole time, and of course the color scheme was not helping her, and it was frustrating to people that the judges didn't acknowledge this thing and say something, and they normally do, and I feel like they also should point out Simone is gorgeous, has amazing clothing, but they all are practically nude, and normally at this point, we're 7 episodes in, we start to have those discussions. So we had the discussion about Utica, like, the big crazy faces aren't always the right choice for every challenge. So we got that one. Kandy got one about always being this one note, loud and angry. They normally talk about that. They talk to Joey J about like not wearing the wig, show us that you can do more. But then they haven't spoken to Gottmik and Simone about being practically naked in every single challenge. So relying on that body, which is something that we've heard for seasons and seasons and seasons, and as viewers, we expect that it gets brought up. We haven't heard Tina about this, but anyway. But Tina did go up in my estimates, a couple things, a couple notches this episode. One, she called it that Olivia is a bit of a diva, and that is true. So if you watch back at, she's also a pot stirrer with a big old smile on her face, but she was the one who's like, we should, since the judges aren't here, we should discuss each other's looks. Okay, she knew exactly what she was doing. She was also the follow-up. Hey, do we want to talk about the fight? And then in this challenge was like, I'm going to take this role. And based on, I don't know how much was given in the script, it seemed like of everyone's, it was the easiest role because you didn't have to say anything. Now that's my bias. If I was looking at it, I would be like, this is so much better of a role because as a mom, you don't have to talk until the very end. And so you can really do this physical camp comedy. Now I'm sure someone could have muffed it, but for me, I can see why Utica wanted that role and why Utica probably would have killed it, and Olivia might have been at the bottom. So anyway, so I do kind of get it. But Tina Burner kind of called her a little bit on being an underground diva. Now that is not always bad. A lot of stars are divas. A lot of fighting for the role you want. So I am not saying that this is something that she needs to get rid of, and if a different queen did it, I'd be like, yes, queen, and everything. I'm just stating a fact. Okay, so there we go. Totally, the very first scene we see is the pregnancy, and it drove me nuts. This is probably not something that a bunch of gay men would know, but a pregnancy belly does not go up here. So if you don't know, and this is fine if you don't, your rib cage is here. The belly cannot go above the rib cage, so they're usually really low. They're almost to the pubic bone, so they're like really low. That's why pregnancy pants are such an issue, is because you can't even wear, I couldn't, maybe other women can, but I was enormous. I had to buy like this special underwear because there's just this mass like right there in front. That's why also women's bodies post-pregnancy look different. So Rose's was like up here in her boobs, and then she had no boobs. It's like, trust me, if you have a belly that big, you got boobs. Anyway, so that was driving me crazy because it didn't look like she was pregnant. But that is such a minor point. I'm sure they were given pregnancy bellies and they just put it in the wrong spot. It's not something I would have known until I was pregnant, and then I was like, oh, this is so weird. So anyway, I thought Rose and Denali were amazing. They looked like two people who had done improv for a while. I thought they were both, it was almost like they made it look so effortless that the judges didn't notice. That's kind of what I feel like is happening, is they are so solid and competent that it doesn't stand out. And especially when they're paired together, it's like the bar just raises. It's kind of like how when you see someone do something super solid, like almost like a backup singer for a professional singer. They are so good and they are so consistent that you almost don't hear them. They're just like another instrument. And that's kind of how I feel about both Rose and Denali. And it's weird to me that time and time again, I was like, oh, clearly they're going to be in the top and LaLa's going to be in the bottom. I feel for LaLa, they were so good. It was kind of like anything less. And this is what's weird, is it feels like a lot of other people ended up top or bottom because their partner was so good, but they were so solid, and then it was like nothing. So it was weird to me. Olivia and Mick got so much. Oh, I don't know what I meant to write, but I think my point was they were on stage for so long without them, and they had so many opportunities to improv. And then Utica, it wasn't the strongest choice. I'll totally admit that. But it was weird to me that they thought it was so bad that it was in the bottom. And then I personally, so Kandy should be noted that she did take the judges' corrections. That should have been noted. I did not think it was in the top, though. I feel like if we had not seen any of these people the whole way through and we saw just this one performance, you would say, this was so like low key. Now, I don't think Kandy should have been in the bottom because I think they should have noted that, you know, you really took directions and played it under, but it wasn't, to me, like this whole like, oh, Kandy and Simone, I really got it. I kept waiting for something to happen. It was like, oh, so, huh? What? I don't know. I just didn't like it. And I don't think I'm projecting any of my feelings about Kandy's performance thus far. I think they should have called out and been like, hey, Kandy, you're safe. We do appreciate that you took a note. You know what I mean? That was my thing. And then, anyway, so then they have everyone come out, and Rose's outfit was so good. It was just so weird to me because it's like, I feel like, and this was something I complained about with Canada, which is like the outfits, I don't know. It's just weird. It's like, is it this beaded challenge or is it not? Is it, sometimes it's the challenge, sometimes it's not. Anyway, we ended up with, when Kandy was in the top, I was like, question mark, Simone, question mark, question mark. Simone's outfit was gorgeous. I think they said this in the Raven and Raja review, fashion photo review, couldn't think of the name, but not having anything at the waist, it's very uppy downy, and to me it's a little distracting. So I'm gonna say, since they said it, it's fine for me to say. But as a friend pointed out, this like svelte, no shape, no corset, no padding look seems to be very in drag. I guess I'm just dated, which makes sense. This is the 13th season I've been watching since the beginning. Trends are changing and my tastes aren't. So anyway, in like two seasons I'll be like, oh, gorgeous, no censure, love it. Anyway, I was really confused by Elliot being in the bottom. So they were like, oh, Tina was bigger. And this is the thing. I did not like them all being backstage watching and giving their own little critiques, because it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know. It just feels, especially like, why you gotta be talking to them? It's like, I don't know. It just seems like psychological warfare to me. And I'm not a fan of it. Tina and Elliot, though, did have a nice discussion about depression. Really appreciated that Tina was capable of understanding capable of empathizing with Elliot, despite the fact that it's not something that Tina suffered with. A lot of times we do see the queens bonding over issues they both share, but it was nice to see someone capable, not that I'm not saying no one else could, but we don't see it as often where somebody says, hey, I don't experience that, but I'm going to do my best to imagine what it's like to be in I'm going to take things that I've seen, in Tina's case, her mother suffered, and use that knowledge to then have sympathy for another character. I should say empathy for another character. I'm listening to Brene Brown on the difference between sympathy and empathy. So being empathetic. And so that was a nice little moment to see. I know a lot of people don't like Elliot. I feel like Elliot, from a production standpoint, really it would have been far kinder to Elliot to just leave Elliot in the loser group and then to have that support network, because she got voted out of that group and then got put in the top group, but nobody really, you know, they're still kind of like, oh, she doesn't belong here. So Elliot ended up to be a queen with no crew, and everybody else kind of had the support of who they were originally with, and Elliot, it did not. So LaLa was in the bottom. I felt it was fair for LaLa to go home unless Elliot biffed it, because there, you know, we pretend it's challenge, and it kind of is, but we do have a memory. There's a reason why nobody can be in the bottom every week and lip sync their way out 10 times in a row. After about 3, we've seen all their tricks. It's just not enough. LaLa should have been in the bottom last time. That was my opinion. That outfit was so poor that there was just no way, and that was the challenge, that she should have been in the bottom. And so this is kind of technically her second. Elliot did really well. Anyway, but I think Elliot is probably at the bottom. Olivia won twice in a row. I felt like Olivia did very well in the challenge, but I felt like she also had to do so much less, because all she had to kind of do was mime escaping. She didn't have to come up with witty lines. She didn't have to do any of that. Until the end, not a big problem, just not, I just didn't feel, I feel like there were other people who had a much harder challenge. I really felt like Rose and Denali should have been in the top. But I don't know. This is sort of like I'm trying to think of, like, there was Heidi, there was Jan, there was a bunch of people who just coasted. I felt like Bendy LaCreme in her original season. There were a lot of people that just, I don't know, it's like we saw something that the judges didn't. And you don't really understand, I don't really understand why they're not calling them up and saying, you are so consistent. Every challenge we throw at you, you do it like you've been preparing for months. Now, do they have as high, these super, like, pop-out lines? No, but I don't know. It's like, does consistency not count for anything? Anyway, I sound angrier than I am. I'm not really, I'm mostly just kind of confused with what's going on. And so anyway, hit me up. Tell me there's some really solid guesses for me. I don't think Rose or Denali are going to make it. And I don't think, and that's not because I don't think they deserve it, but because it just seems like if the judges aren't seeing what I'm seeing, I don't know what they can do to be seen. Does that make sense? Like, some of the best, like one of the, it's the same, kind of the same with Utica, which is that she doesn't win with that great outfit. So it's just kind of like a little confusing to me. There's a lot of people saying that Simone's going to probably take it. That's probably a pretty good guess. Based on, Simone has some really great looks and the judges see those things. So anyway, okay, so hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you think. Bye.